Welcome to another episode of the Binge Club. I'm your host, Landon Johnson, and I'm with Cindy and Gil, my experts today, to discuss The Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. Okay, give me a rundown for how the movie starts. Like, put us back there.
Okay, so this is a prequel. So it takes place 64 years before the first Hunger Games film.
Oh.
So that by that time, they're just reaching the 74th. The second film does the 75th Hunger Games. This is the 10th. So they're still kind of figuring out what the Hunger Games are, what they're for, and the format that we eventually see it become is kind of in its infant stages here.
Would you agree with that? Is that pretty much what
what
you got out of it as well?
That was my favorite element of the whole thing, is to see how these games evolve, because they're very elaborate in the original movies, and they take place on this giant island. Here it's like more primitive. You get to see these crude weapons of these kids like in this like gladiator arena style setup. That's my favorite part of the movie, is seeing the primitive games, how they started.
Have either of y'all read the books?
I have.
Okay, you have.
I read them all.
Now, does our audience need to read the books? Do they need to expand on anything within this prequel?
You do not have to have read the books. Obviously, it helps. There will be things in there for book readers that they will get that if you're just walking in the theater, you won't get. But nothing in the plot is dependent on any of that. So, and the fact that it's a prequel is kind of starting from scratch. So it helps to know what the Hunger Games are, because then you can appreciate the difference between where it ended up and where it started. So I would say definitely, if you have the time and the interest, watch the original films, but you don't need to have read the books.
Yeah, it's a prequel. I could say you could just start here and then watch the original films. It's kind of like the Alien trilogy. You don't need to see the first 3 Alien movies before you go back and watch Prometheus. You can kind of use this film as a jumping off point.
Oh, great.
So
Now, this is the Binge Club, so we tell our audience what movies they actually need to watch and see before they go to the theaters. So if they had to see one film of the Hunger Games franchise, what would it be?
Well, the first Hunger Games, I think, would be an important thing. It's the origin story of Katniss, and there may be some references to Katniss in this movie.
Maybe.
There's some references to the creatures that you see in the later Hunger Games movie. So one would definitely just put you right where you need to be.
Would you agree with that, Gil?
I agree with it, but again, I don't really, the benefit you get of watching the original movies is that you can spot the Easter eggs, but you don't really need to do that. Just go in fresh and make this your starting point for the Hunger Games franchise.
So what I'm feeling is that you are a Hunger Game enthusiast. You like the franchise, but you, not so much.
I like them, but again, I never got, I didn't become a big hardcore fan. I watched them once in the theaters and that was it. So I'm like a casual fan. I enjoyed them once, but I never felt the urge to go back and re-explore them,
But you mentioned that it's similar to other works of art that you've seen before. A Battle Royale, I think, came up before.
Yeah, Battle Royale is one. That's a more violent, R-rated film about kids killing each other. That's a little bit more in my arena. There's also this great Aussie horror film I always recommend to people called The Furies, which is sort of like The Hunger Games meets Friday the 13th.
Ooh, fun.
It's about these group of girls who are abducted and taken to this mysterious reserve, and they're being stalked by a bunch of leather-faced Jason, Michael Myers types.
Oh, I love a slasher.
Yeah, so it's like a slasher version of The Hunger Games, and it's really good. There's a lot of twists and turns in that one as well. I kind of hope I would like to see The Hunger Games get away from the young adult formula and go more serious R-rated territory. I think that would be another
I like
way
the
to reinvent the
I like the young adult stuff. That's just
the
my
opposite
thought.
end of the spectrum here.
And this movie did feel kind of like a return to the time when they were making a lot of these YA novels into movies. I mean, we've got some recently, like Shadow and Bone on Netflix, stuff like that, but it just doesn't feel like something that they're doing so much anymore. So it was nice to kind of return to that. The original Hunger Games kind of kicked off that whole trend. And then as that diminished and the diminishing returns of movies that may not have been as good, we had the Maze Runner series, we had the Divergent series, it kind of petered out. So I liked going back to this time, felt like a throwback.
Where would you like to see the franchise go from here?
Well, like I said, I would be interested in seeing other games, other versions of the games. So in the second one, Catching Fire, we see the Quarter Quell, which is a special game. And then there is a 25th. I forget what the name of that is called, but there is a 25th one that's also a special game. And so seeing different iterations of the game and focusing on that, I think would please people. But I like the love story, so I hope they keep that aspect.
And what's your favorite installment of the franchise?
Probably the second one. I remember that one being the leanest and meanest of the group. And we got to see adults thrown in the mix. We got to see former tributes have to get thrown back into the mayhem.
That's
and
the special twist.
And what about you, Cindy? Your favorite?
I like that one too, just because I like the design of the games in that. Yeah. And sorry, this is a spoiler if you haven't seen it, but the games are designed as a clock, and each hour a new danger comes into each wedge of the clock, and watching them kind of run around and escape that is so interesting. And they definitely do not have the technology to do anything like that in this in this iteration of the game.
Well, thank you so much, guys, for being here. I have certainly learned a lot. I'm sure our audience has. Thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode of the Binge Club. We'll be back next week to just talk about Godzilla, the monarch of monsters, and the iconic monster himself.